Hey guys, welcome back to my channel McNallie Money, home of all things stock, investment, and personal finance related. Now for today's video, we're going to be talking about a small cap Canadian company. They operate in the same industry as Very Good Foods, Beyond Meat, and Tattooed Chef. So we've talked about some of their competitors on this channel, but they just came out with massive news today. The share price was up dramatically, over 20% per share, you guys. So a huge upward move. The company name is Rockshield Capital, and I'm really excited about this stock for a number of reasons that we're going to go through in this video. So we'll kick things off with a deep dive of the recent news. We'll talk about the company business model, and then I'll give you guys my analysis and actually compare Rockshield to some of the other players in this space that we've talked about on the channel. Now before we get into it, you guys, please take a second to smash the like button. It helps me out in a huge way. If you're not subscribed to the channel itself, McNallie Money, feel free to do so. And let me know in the comment section below if you've heard of Rockshield, if you're currently holding shares, and how you think they stack up to some of the other players in this space. Now without further ado, let's jump into today's video. Okay guys, so that's right. Today we're going to be talking about Rockshield Capital Corp. Now this is a VC venture capital fund, and they just had some massive news that came out today. Obviously you can see at the time of close, share price was up 22%, 14 cents per share. So they closed out Tuesday's session at 78 cents Canadian on the backs of this massive news. And this is exactly why I wanted to talk about this company today. This one's actually been on my radar for a number of months. I had a few friends talk to me about this company, but I was really waiting for a catalyst or some big news to come out before I put out a video on Rockshield. So this was the perfect time to do so. Now the other thing that I'm really excited about Rockshield Capital is these acquisitions. There's two of them that we're going to talk about in more detail in this video. Really propels them into the agribusiness, food tech, plant-based type of space. Now, as many of you know, we've talked about a number of these type of companies on the channel before. So Very Good Food Company and Tattooed Chef are two that come to mind. And interestingly enough, Rockshield actually compares their business directly to these two competitors later in their investor presentation. So I thought that was super interesting. It folds perfectly into my channel and audience. And I really wanted to get this video out and talk about this company because of those two big reasons. Number one, news, and number two, how well it fits with the channel niche. So if we pull out to a one-year chart here, you guys, you can see Rockshield Capital was trading in the 6-cent range back in November of this year, and they've been on an absolute tear ever since. So if we move to the start of the year here, January of 2021, you can see they closed out the year around 11 cents. In January, they were up in the 19-20 cent range. Fast forward to April, they were getting close to that $0.50 50-cent mark. And then just recently here, as mentioned today, with this big news that these two investments have actually closed, they've now propelled up close to 80 cents, which is phenomenal for this company. So congrats to anyone who's been holding this for the last 6-7 months. You've done tremendously well. And I personally expect that trend to continue based on some of the revenue guidance that we're going to look at in a couple of minutes here. Now this is actually the article that I wanted to kick things off with here. So this came out Tuesday morning, and if we open up the article, the headline reads, Rockshield completes agribusiness, food tech, and plant-based investments, forecasting $60 million for 2021 revenue. Now this firm really seeks to invest in a number of different disciplines, ranging from fintech to MJ to healthcare, but the agribusiness is really where they're going to make their initial splash and kick things off. So this acquisition is really made up of two different components. Number one is Bell Pulses Limited. This is a pulse processor. We're going to talk about what that means later in the investor presentation. And the other component here is Sapientia Technology. Now in terms of the details here, Sapientia was acquired for $6.4 million US, and Bell Pulses was acquired for $30 million Canadian, which was paid in the form of cash. Now obviously Rockshield needs money to finance both of these acquisitions. So if you continue to scroll down here, you can see under the funding highlights section, Rockshield is pleased to announce it has closed on a revolving debt facility for $33.5 million from a Canadian lender, and that's actually where Rockshield is getting the majority of the funds to finance these acquisitions. Now, under the strategic rationale section, a little bit lower here, you can see the numbers start to become very meaningful in a very short amount of time. So because of these two acquisitions, Rockshield now has a fully vertically integrated agribusiness division, and they're forecasting $60 million in top-line revenue, $15 million or 25% gross profit, and $9 million in EBITDA for the current calendar 2021 year. Now, obviously, this is just a starting point, and Rockshield is really looking at this as a long-term investment with the goal of creating a leading, vertically integrated, and global plant-based foods platform. And this really all started back in January of this year, where Rockshield announced that it had really changed, updated, and amended its investment policy, and that's what enabled them to start looking at investments in the plant-based foods market. Now, as we get into the investor presentation, we're going to talk about how highly fragmented this market really is, and we saw that in the Beyond Meat and Very Good Food Company investor presentation as well. But what these acquisitions allows Rockshield to really do is create a seed to table type of situation. And if you scroll down a little bit further, you can see they now process everything from the raw ingredients right through to the finished consumer packaged goods, CPG. And I think that's really what's so powerful about this company moving forward. And that's why we saw that share price move in such a meaningful way on Tuesday's trading session. Now, in addition to that, they also acquired the management talent at both of these companies. And between them, they have a very strong track record. So you can see some of the brands that they've formerly worked at include Pepsi, Frito-Lay, Cheetos, Quaker Oats, Gatorade. These are some of the largest food and beverage related CPG companies in the entire world. And that bench strength is exactly what's going to allow Rockshield to scale this business unit or division in a meaningful way over the next couple of years. Now, if we jump into the Rockshield investor presentation, funny enough, this is actually powered by Dropbox, which is another company that I'm currently invested in. I actually sold some call options on DBX today, so I wanted to call that out. But to kick things off, I wanted to look at their mission statement and again, the problem that they're trying to solve. Because as many of you know who've watched this channel for a while, I truly think great businesses set out to solve great problems or great challenges that people encounter. So mission statement for Rockshield: to drive shareholder value by investing in leading companies in hyper-growth sectors that have the ability to change our world for the better. So what's not to like there, you guys? Obviously, they've identified plant-based food, the agribusiness, as one of the first areas or hyper-growth sectors that really meet their criteria. And that's exactly what we're going to look at in detail throughout this presentation. And you can see again, they call out their two acquisitions, Bell Pulses and Sapientia Technology, with the forecasted $60 million in 2021 revenue. So Rockshield really feels like there's three areas or problems that plant-based foods really solve. So number one, obviously, is the planet, you guys. A plant-based diet has significantly lower environmental impact. We've talked about this in a number of these other presentations. There's a number of reasons for this. So obviously methane production from livestock contributing to greenhouse gases. Nitrous oxide is another bad one. Between the meat, egg, and dairy industries combined, they produce about 65% of the worldwide nitrous oxide emissions. And nitrous oxide is approximately 300 times more powerful or more effective at trapping heat into the Earth's atmosphere than carbon dioxide. So very problematic for global warming. Now, the other main component here, this is the big one for me, and this is really why I've started to eat a lot of plant-based foods in my own diet, is the water consumption needed to raise livestock is astonishing, you guys. So 50% of all the water in the United States actually goes to raising animals for food, and a single pound of meat requires 2,400 gallons of water compared to a pound of wheat, which only requires 25 gallons. So when you start to think about that and multiply that out by the Canadian and US population, this company is based in Vancouver. So if you're looking at all of North America combined, the numbers become very astonishing very quickly. So that's the first reason here, is really solving problems related to global warming and the planet's overall health. Now, the second problem that plant-based foods really solve is related to health and wellness of the people actually consuming it. So science has now shown plant-based diets are healthier for the people actually eating them as well, in addition to being more sustainable for the planet. So in terms of life expectancy, vegetarians are now expected to live an average of 8 years longer than people who are non-vegetarian. And a lot of that has to actually do with cholesterol levels. So vegetarians on average have cholesterol in the range of about 160 versus non-vegetarians, which are over 200, 210 type of range. Now, some of the other leading causes of death that are really curbed or helped by plant-based foods are cancers, heart problems, and obesity. Again, 3 of the most common causes of death that we see here in North America. And the final pillar that Rockshield really highlights here in the 3 are the economics behind plant-based foods and diets. So obviously helping the planet, helping the population are great, but as we've talked about a number of times on this channel, you need to be able to drive shareholder value and make money for investors, or else the other 2 really don't matter. So the economics behind this, you guys, plant-based protein is still only a fraction of the overall global protein market. So you can see plant-based foods came in at around $11 billion. This is between 2017 and 2020, compared to beef, which came in at over $300 billion, and pork, which topped the list at $399 billion. Now fish, seafood, and chicken obviously aren't quite as popular as beef and pork, but they still came in nearly $200 billion each, compared again to $11 billion for plant-based foods. So we're really only scratching the surface here, you guys, and the total addressable market, or TAM, for protein products in the world is absolutely mind-blowing. Now that being said, if we look at the actual growth rates for each one of these categories, the complete inverse is true. So plant-based foods are actually growing faster than any other segment, at about 12% per year. Now this is a compound annual growth rate projected out to 2027. So on a macro scale, the growth rate for plant-based foods is phenomenal, and that's exactly why I'm bullish on this sector overall. As you know, I hold shares of Very Good Food Company and Tattooed Chef because I believe in this category overall. Fish and seafood, along with chicken, are expected to grow at 2.5%, beef at 3.1%, and pork at 2%. So the other categories, although they're behemoths right now, are expected to slow down in terms of growth when you're really comparing that to plant-based protein. So those problems or opportunities, depending how you look at it, really lead nicely into this page, which talks about Rockshield's strategic rationale. So number 1, the plant-based food market overall, we saw that aggressive compound annual growth of nearly 12%. They're expected to top out at about $74.2 billion by 2027. So huge addressable market, obviously a lot of room for a number of companies to succeed here. So that's number 1. There's a huge prize at the end of the road for these guys. Now Rockshield believes the market is very fragmented. And in a number of these presentations that I've looked at, a lot of companies really call this out. So there are companies that operate in certain components or segments of the value chain, but there's very few that see the product from end to end. And that's what Rockshield really feels like they're able to do with these 2 acquisitions. And that's exactly what they mention in this point, with full exposure to the entire plant-based value chain. Now, because of that focus on the vertical integration, Rockshield is really able to leverage the individual strengths of each component or each business division while streamlining the overall operation and realizing some of those synergies between business units. And underlining all of this is really the experience of the management team and senior leadership, which come from some of those major international or global players that we mentioned a few slides ago. So perfect segue to this page, which really talks about the vertical integration. Our subsidiaries capture the entire value chain of the plant-based food industry through a vertically integrated seed to market or seed to table market platform. So they've got the agribusiness, the food tech, and then the consumer or end product market. Now in terms of the seed, the farms are really focused on things like extrusion, pulse fraction, which we're going to look at and define in a second here, the processing and the genetics of the seeds themselves. They then have an R&D component here, which looks at the intellectual property. They've got 25 different patents currently in the works, proprietary formulation, intellectual property, and trademarks. So again, a lot of this stuff is really coveted, you guys. It takes a long time to refine and really hone in on the perfect mixtures, seeds, whatever the case is. And Rockshield's been able to acquire a lot of that IP or intellectual property through these 2 acquisitions. Now, in terms of the customer facing end or the market itself, they've got obviously the product, the consumer packaged goods, the plant-based alternatives. the redesigned and proprietary snacks. So we're going to look at that in a little bit more detail. But one interesting fact, the guys behind Sapientia actually developed or invented the Cheeto. So that really gives you some perspective as to the proprietary snacks we're talking here. These are well-known global brands, and these are the kind of minds and experience that are now coming over under the Rockshield umbrella. So now that we've talked about the company's share price, we've looked at the recent news, we've started to talk about some of the business opportunities that Rockshield is really trying to solve here. I wanted to look at the acquisitions here in a little bit more detail. So again, on the agribusiness side, we've got Bell Pulses. Now this is really where they're involved with that pulse processing, and we're going to talk about that on the next slide here. On the food tech, that's really where Sapientia comes in. Sapientia Technology has two different divisions. So they've got the food tech, and then they've also got the market or CPG division, which is focused on the Healthy Table or their Kaha brand of products. Now we're going to look at a few examples of those again in a couple of slides here, but between these two acquisitions, it really gives them three main business units: the agribusiness, the food tech, and the market, which then flow through to the Bell Pulses pulse processing division and the plant-based foods alternatives or the Kaha Foods brand itself. And holistically, that's really how Rockshield Capital has set up their plant-based foods division or overall structure. So first off, the agribusiness, this is the Bell Pulses division. Rockshield is acquiring an industry-leading processor of pulse crops. Now, pulse crops are really the core ingredient in a lot of plant-based protein or products currently on the market. So examples here are dried peas, beans, lentils, chickpeas, and through fractionation and extrusion, that's really what takes these core ingredients and turns them into the proteins that are then used in plant-based products. So industry leaders like Beyond Meat, Impossible Foods, these are the largest ingredient suppliers in the world, and this is really where a lot of these other plant-based food companies' core inputs come from. So the first facility here, you guys, is designed to split yellow peas and chana with a combined annual capacity of 41,000 metric tons. The second facility is designed to split green peas, whole green peas, and mill flour with an annual capacity of 52,000 metric tons. So between the two, 93,000 metric ton capacity, which is phenomenal. Now, in addition to the pulse processing, Bell Pulses also has a number of things that they bring to the table. So they've got a 40-year history and track record, exceptional commitment to quality and high-level products. They've also got state-of-the-art manufacturing equipment, proprietary customization for efficient processing. So again, we talked about some of that intellectual property. Here's a great example of that. Strong company culture built from decades of success, that 40-year legacy we just mentioned, and over 93,000 metric tons of pulse crops processed annually. Now on the food tech side of things, this is the Sapientia technology acquisition. This is where you can see they invented the Cheetos. So 25 patents, PhD food engineering, so extremely strong bench strength here or leadership team. The strategic acquisition will allow Rockshield to utilize technology across all companies and product categories. Sapientia is an industry-leading processing and formulation or forming technology company that creates the latest generation of delicious, high nutrition, high taste, and texture plant-based foods. Products included in their current lineup include plant-based meats, plant-based meat snacks, plant-based dairy milks, yogurts, puffed and twisted food snacks, which all are characterized by high protein, low fat, and high nutrition levels while delivering on delicious taste and texture. And you'll notice if you're consuming these types of products, you guys, the taste and texture really are hard to master. The health benefits and the benefits to the planet are there, but a lot of times you do compromise on taste and texture. So it's really important that Rockshield is calling this out and making this one of their main focal points, because again, that's how a lot of consumers vote with their wallet, is based on the taste and the texture of the products that they're consuming. Now, in addition to that, Sapientia also has their Kaha Foods division, and this is really the consumer brand that's focused on targeting the entire plant-based food market. So you can see the Kaha Food brands here. They've got the 100% hemp milk, the hemp seed cooking oil. They've also got the perfect burger, just to name a few. And Kaha really aims to become a globally leading brand in the market for consumer plant-based products, which include wholesome snacks, meats, pasta, and more. And this is really the other end of the value chain. these are the products that you're going to see in the grocery store and the end consumer is really going to be purchasing. Now, I mentioned in the intro, one of the reasons I was so excited about doing this video is because we've already talked about some other competitors in this space on the channel. So Beyond Meat, Tattooed Chef, very good food company, just to name a few. But as you can see with this comparison chart, all of these competitors have holes in their business model or value chain. So Beyond Meat is really focused on the consumer packaged goods space, the intellectual property. Tattooed Chef is focused on the white labeling, although they're starting to move away from that, and the CPG products. Very Good Food Company is really just focused on those consumer packaged goods, so end products that consumers are buying from retailers, whereas Rockshield now has all 5 of these areas covered. So the processing, the white labeling, the consumer brands, the genetics, and the intellectual property are all encompassed by these 2 acquisitions. And I think that's really what differentiates Rockshield from some of these others in this space and really gives them those synergies and operational advantages that the other competitors are unable to achieve. Now, another great chart actually provided in the Rockshield investment deck, and how I wanted to close this video out, is comparing some of the numbers and metrics of Rockshield versus the competitors we just looked at on the last slide. So you can see down at the bottom here, here's expected revenue, as discussed, of about $60 million in 2021, with that EBITDA number of $9.1 million. Now, in terms of enterprise value to 2021 revenue, Rockshield is trading at approximately 2.4 times, or a 2.4 multiple. Now, when we look at that same multiple on some of the other companies like Beyond Meat, you can see they're up close to 13 times. Tattooed Chef, still very competitive, but 6.6 times multiple, so nearly triple what Rockshield is looking at. And Very Good Food Company, unfortunately, is not available, but if we look at their enterprise value to 2020 revenue, you can see they're trading just over 69 times. Now, obviously, some of the actual numbers, revenue, for example, Beyond Meat, up over $750 million, Tattooed Chef getting close to 300 million. The numbers themselves are quite a bit larger in terms of a top line look, but when you're looking at EBITDA, not only are the ratios much stronger for Rockshield, but the actual EBITDA levels themselves are very comparable. So Beyond Meat only expected to have 2021 EBITDA of 5.5 million, with Tattooed Chef coming in at 11.25 million. So when you start to think of it from that angle, Rockshield is looking very competitive with these 2 acquisitions and has really propelled himself into a competitive spot in the plant-based food market. And it's for exactly that reason, along with all of the other things that we've discussed in this video, that I'm so excited about the news that came out today, about the massive share price move that we just saw. Again, a 20% move in one day, you guys, is phenomenal. And about Rockshield as a potential investment overall. Now, as you know, this is a sector and an industry on a macro scale that I'm extremely excited about. And I'm looking at Rockshield as an opportunity to get in at the ground floor of a company that's just entering the plant-based food market and really invest in a company or stock that's going to have growth for years and years to come. Now, as mentioned, I currently haven't pulled the trigger on Rockshield. I wish I had a couple of weeks ago. I was actually entertaining it, and obviously now we see that huge upward move, and I'm kicking myself. But this is definitely one that's on the top of my watch list, you guys. I'm actually thinking about rotating some money out of Tattooed Chef and diversifying into one of these smaller players in this space, and Rockshield is a perfect candidate for that. So that's it for today's video, you guys. Hopefully enjoyed. In the comment section below, feel free to let me know if you've heard of Rockshield before, if you're currently holding shares, and how you think they stack up to some of these competitors. If you haven't already, please make sure you smash the like button. It helps me out in a huge way. Check out the video description below for a few affiliate links, specifically Questrade. If you've been sitting on the sidelines, you're looking to get involved with trading, and you don't know what brokerage to really start things off with, I would highly recommend Questrade. You'll get a $50 referral bonus for using that affiliate link, and that'll actually take care of your first couple trade commissions for you. Now, if you're not already subscribed to the channel itself, McNallie Money, make sure you do so. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.